So we will be going over online storefronts and marketplaces. We'll talk about e-commerce performance metrics. We'll go over best practices recommendations, and finally we'll have a Q&A at the very end. And if you'd like to ask any questions for that Q&A, there's a section at the bottom of your Zoom screen where you can type out those questions for us, and we'll get them answered for you at the very end of the webinar. So now we are going to get into all of this. So what is your e-commerce business? It doesn't matter where you're selling online. As long as you're selling online, you've got an e-commerce business. And this can be custom orders from direct messaging or emails. This could also be through your own storefront website, which would be something where you have your own URL, www.mystore.com. An e-commerce business could also be through a marketplace, which is a place where you list your products among other similar product listings. And a few examples of a marketplace are going to be Amazon, Etsy, or eBay. And we're going to dive into a little more depth with each one of these. We're going to discuss the pros and cons of each, and then we'll make some recommendations as well. So to start, we're going to talk about custom orders. When it comes to custom orders for a small business, you likely have an Instagram or a Facebook page. You're sharing the products or your ideas to your followers, and then you're taking messages directly and taking orders directly from your customers. The alternative custom order is that you've got products and you are able to go to different farmers markets, trade shows, and so on. You can take orders directly from your end users physically and ship them out when you're ready. So those are the two kinds of custom orders that will translate to an e-commerce business. So one pro of this is obviously you get to talk to your customers. You get to know them, they get to know you and your product, and it's very much a personalized experience for your customers, which is great. They'll remember you, and they're ordering because they love the things that you've got, and they're there to support you. And from a financial perspective, this generally also has the best profit margins because there are no storefront fees and there are no fees associated with it other than shipping, which is great. Now to get into some of the cons. So the cons are that if you have a lot of customers, managing your relationships and orders within each of those conversations can become complicated. It is very difficult to scale and manage how many simultaneous conversations you can have regarding orders, fulfillment, and verifying that you've got the correct information. It's difficult to manage manually, and similarly, it is difficult to manage these orders yourself. And obviously, you're getting these messages through a messaging center, so they aren't going to translate into orders in any way. You're going to have to track them through a spreadsheet or something like this to be able to make sure that you're tracking all of the orders and taking care of each customer's orders and details. So again, managing that can become quite difficult, especially once you've started to accumulate a larger number of customers. So now we're going to get into storefronts. Storefronts are fantastic because you're still providing your vision of your business for your customers and your products, but it is a customizable e-commerce experience. So whatever you want your site to be, you can make that happen. And there are a lot of options from something that's very simple, like an Instagram store, where you can just make a post and then sell what's on that post. Or you can have an entire customized experience through basically any of the sites that you see out there. Some of them provide cookie cutters and templates like Squarespace and Wix. Others allow you to customize pretty much every little detail. And a few examples of those would be WooCommerce, Shopify, and pretty much all the other ones that are out there. So the great thing about having your own storefront is the branding and legitimacy. If you are meeting somebody or seeing somebody and they ask, where can I find your products or your store? You can just say, oh, you can just go to my website, and you can just give them the URL, and it's just that simple. And then an additional pro of storefronts is they have great profit margins because you do control both the cost and the sales price. Now we're going to get into some cons. One con is high customer acquisition costs. You have to drive traffic to your site, and then you have to convert people who are on your site to purchase your product. So that funnel can cost quite a bit of money. And you have to figure out how much money you want to be able to spend. So if you have a low ticket item, if you're selling something for maybe $10 to $12, you've got to really spend $10 to $12 to get your customers. So you have to keep that in mind. And again, as far as setting up websites and the technical capabilities that each person has, some of these sites can be very difficult to manage. They can be very technical. And what I mean by that is not all of these sites have the capability to manage all of your fulfillment process. So when you get an order, you're still going to have to pull your orders out of these platforms and use additional software to manage it. And integrating these two systems can be very challenging especially if you're a person that's not very technically savvy. So there are some drawbacks to having your own storefront as well. And of course, there are subscription fees with storefronts. Generally, they're not that much, but if you are selling 10 items a month and your subscription fee is $30 to $50 a month, that goes into quite a bit of where you're looking at. So you may want to have a little bit more traction in your sales and your product and your brand before you start your own store. But for the most part, this is something that you will eventually want to do sooner rather than later with your brand and with your products. All right, so finally, your third option to sell online is marketplaces. So marketplaces are generally places where you are one of many products in the ecosystem. People can go into this site and they can search for your products. So to name a few, this is going to be Amazon, Google Shopping, Walmart.com, eBay, Etsy, and these, as well as these other stores that we have listed here. All of these exist as marketplaces where the focus is generally on the products and not necessarily the brands. And a pro of this is the visibility and searchability. People are already going to these sites, and if your product is among the things that they're looking for, they would just search for the keyword that's associated with your product, and your item would come up, no questions asked. And with each of these products, there's performance marketing involved, so you also have potential to rank higher on these listings by paying to rank higher. And that's still more scalable than having your own storefront and driving people to your store and then converting that person. So searchability and visibility are definitely really important aspects of marketplaces. And with that, it's easy to scale. So if you really just want to focus on selling products and maybe you don't really care about the branding aspect of it, or maybe any other aspect, it's really easy to just grow your business as a business in this sense here. So it's great enough to be able to move forward kind of as a first step or as one of those earlier steps. And of course, it ties traffic. So right now, most people have heard of or used all of these sites. And there's a reason for that. It's because you can go virtually to any of these places and pretty much find everything that you were looking for. So because of that, people are going to come to these sites. And if you have a product that you really want to get into your customers' hands, obviously you want to go into a place that has that high traffic. So those are some of the pros of using a marketplace. The cons are that there's very heavy competition on marketplaces. So unlike having your own store where everything is under your control, in this space, you might be selling widget A, but there could be 1,000 other widget A's out there. So how are you going to differentiate yourself and your product? Is it just purely through your pricing, or are there other things that you can bring to the table to stand out in the marketplace with your product? There's also within this space an option to pay to rank higher in searches, as I said earlier. And this competitive edge generally goes to mid-size and larger companies who can afford to spend the money to rank higher, to push the volumes that they've got. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And within the competition, it's not just direct competition from a product perspective, but it's also from a performance marketing perspective. So even if you have the best product at the best price, you may not rank the highest just because somebody is spending that money to get into the top 5 slots. So one of the things that we try to focus on and we recommend for new businesses and startups is to expand to different storefronts, not necessarily to expand the product offerings that you have. As you can imagine, if you had 1,000 different products or even 100 different products, managing that across 2 different stores would be quite a difficult task. So in the sense that marketplaces can scale up very easily, they also don't necessarily make it easy to manage that scale. You can grow quickly, but your shoes are going to be much smaller than what's going to fit when you get to that point. So that is something to keep in mind. And finally, one of the biggest drawbacks within marketplaces is the profit. So obviously with this high searchability and high traffic comes a cost, and that cost is that marketplaces will generally take a pretty substantial percentage of your sales. So for example, Amazon takes 15% off of all of your sales. Even if you don't use their fulfillment, it's a 15% minimum that they're generally going to take. And every storefront has a pretty sizable amount that they take off of the top for sales, for listing, or for transaction fees. So because of that, if you have something that's very slim on the margin, you may not make any money, or you might actually lose money selling on these large marketplaces. So we would caution you against thinking of it in terms of, oh, it's a big name, I have to be there, my products have to be there. Because in reality, if you can't make any money there, and you're actually possibly even losing money selling on these places, then it's actually not going to be a great business decision for you. So just keep that in mind as you're trying to pick which platform you'd like to sell on as well. So to sum up, those are our 3 e-commerce types. We have custom orders, storefronts, and marketplaces. So now we are going to get into the performance metrics. There are literally thousands of things that we could take a look at as far as analytics, metrics, numbers, and what to look at to be successful in this space. But the 2 that we are going to focus on here are the run rate and the shipping cost. The reason for that is because no matter how simple or sophisticated your business is, these are the two things that you're looking at. You know, whether you have 1 order a month or 1,000 orders a month or 10 orders a month, these are things you're going to want to take a look at, and we want to make sure that you understand what they are and what they mean. So to start, we're going to talk about the run rate. The run rate is basically what your day-to-day changes. So day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, how are your sales today versus yesterday? How are your sales doing this week compared to last week? And how are your sales this month compared to last month? So that's going to be your run rate. And two things that we are going to take a look at with the run rate is the revenue and products. So these two are actually tied together, but they're also quite different, and we are going to get into that. The run rate really evaluates how much money you're making and if you're making any money at all. Profits are quite important if you're in business. I mean, that's why you're in business to begin with. So making sure that your expenses don't outpay your revenue is really important from a numbers perspective. You can also project your growth with your revenue. If you're growing by 10% every day, then you should understand that from a supply chain perspective, you need to make sure that you've got your orders, you've got enough inventory to continue your growth rate. Run rate is also important for overall business health. A healthy business is a profitable business, so make sure that as you evaluate your profitability, can you sustain your business the way that it is? Can you grow in the way that you want to? And from a product perspective, this is what we actually view as more important, because e-commerce success is really just about volume. The more you sell, the quicker you're going to sell, the more money you'll make, the less your costs become, and that's how you're going to scale that. And e-commerce is about scale, and understanding your product rate will help to determine how quickly and where you're scaling. So this is a real-time performance metric, and it's something that you can absolutely peg to say, look, I'm making X amount of money, but I'm also selling quite a bit more. And as I sell more, my costs will go down, my cost for production will go down, cost for shipping fulfillment goes down, and I can broker better rates with my storefronts and shipping carriers. And they don't care about how many products you're selling. Run rate also projects your burn rate. So your burn rate is essentially how much money you're spending a month. So when you sell a product, you have the cost of goods of that product, but then you also have the expenses with fulfillment. So your shipping and your packaging that goes with the shipping. So how much you sell will determine how much you burn as well. So understanding that will help you with negotiating better with your service providers. And then finally, we have listing adjustments. Obviously, if you see that some products have a certain performance metric, let's say you were constantly selling 10 of your widget A's every month or every week, but now this week you're actually on pace to sell 5. Well, now you've got to figure out why that is. So you got to look at your competitors, ask yourself, is the pricing off? Is there something new going on in the space I'm unaware of? And then adjust your listings from there. But you do this through the products, not necessarily the revenues. So that's a really important metric to keep in mind. So now we are going to get into shipping costs. So shipping costs is essentially all cost savings, right? And like I said, you have to put your product in the packaging and you have to ship it out and get it through a carrier. So some of the tips that we provide for packaging is obviously using the smaller packages, as small a packaging as your orders will fit into. A lot of people tend to want to reuse the boxes from their own orders to ship, but this will actually end up costing you quite a bit more money than if you had dedicated packaging for your products that was smaller. So always try to use the smallest packaging, and this will end up saving you a lot of money in the long run. Also try to use fewer packages as well. If you have larger orders or multiple items within an order, try to consolidate those into one package. It doesn't really make sense to ship in different packages because you're going to have to pay for each of those different labels for each package that you're sending out. And that will almost always be more expensive than just having that one larger box. So try to keep that in mind as well. And especially if you have a larger item, try to use flat rate boxes. This is a USPS thing. Make sure you use flat rates when possible because it doesn't calculate weight. It will get you there in time, and it's the same price. And now we're going to get into carrier selection tips. So as far as carrier selection tips, be very careful. We're going to go over this in our Thursday episode, but be very careful of delivery service types because different delivery carrier services have potentially the same delivery dates, but with very different costs. So you might have a 2-day shipping that's for a small parcel and a 2-day shipping for a medium or a large parcel. But if you use the wrong type of service, this is going to be 3 or 4 times as expensive as using one or the other. And that's a fee that's imposed by the carriers. So be very mindful of what carrier you choose. It will save you a lot of money and a lot of headache at the end of the day. And one big thing that we like to talk about over here is that 2-day shipping is absolutely not necessary. This is an Amazon thing, and it's pretty much exclusively an Amazon thing. And for a small business like yourself, especially if you have your site and you're fulfilling your site yourself, just always choose the cheapest rate. This is generally going to be ground or express on FedEx Ground and on UPS and USPS, and that will save you so much more money in the short run and in the long run. And that's really important for cost savings as well. And finally, use shipping services for volume discounts. There are a lot of shipping services out there that you can use, and they're going to provide discounts to your shipping bill that, quite frankly, there is no way that a small business or even 1,000 small businesses could achieve. We're talking about upwards of 90% discounts on your shipping. So that is also something to keep in mind in that space. Use a shipping service. It's going to save you a lot of money at the end of the day. All right, so now we're going to get into our recommendations and tips. So what do we recommend? So first, identify your breadwinning products and focus on them. What this means is rather than having a diverse product portfolio, try to focus on those products that are going to make you a lot of money and have a larger volume for those items. This might be your top 5 or 10 products. Just focus on those so that you can scale up both your operations and your cost of goods. 2, diversify your e-commerce footprint as soon as possible. Where you want to expand is your e-commerce footprint, because if you have 1,000 products, but you've actually only got 5 different SKUs, only 5 different types of products, you're really only managing 5 products, even though you actually physically have 1,000 products. And this is going to be a lot more manageable than managing 100 types of different products within 1,000 items on 2 platforms. And it's going to be so much easier, especially with all the tools that are available now, to diversify where you're selling your products online. 3, pay attention to your product churn and run rates. Make sure that you're paying attention to the numbers that are available to you and making sure that 1, you don't sell out, and 2, you're not overstocking something, because these items are taking up space and you're a small business, so that space is very important, especially if you're selling out of your spare bedroom or garage. You don't want those things to just be sitting in there collecting dust. So pay attention to what you're selling and how well those items are selling. This kind of leads into our 4th point, which is try not to run out of inventory. This will be opportunities missed. You have all the data in front of you to make sure that you understand what your product churn is and what your run rates are. So use that to calculate based off of your supply chain when you can get your product, when you can make your product, and just make sure that you don't run out of inventory, because people want to pay you, but they can if you run out of inventory, and that's going to end up being money lost and potentially a customer lost. 5, minimize the types of shipping packaging that you use. You don't need to have a different special package for every single one of your items. You don't need a unique package for each one. Try to use maybe 1 or 2 different types of shipping packages. Maybe one for individual orders and then another for orders that have more than one product or that are a little bit larger. And by doing this, you can get discounts off of your shipping package. Like if you order 500 of a package versus 100, this might save you 30 to 40% on your shipping costs. You're going to use that packaging anyway, so you might as well save by buying it in bulk. And this goes into our 6th point here, which is by minimizing your shipping packaging, you can purchase in bulk. 7, offer free shipping for your customers. We went over this previously, but I wanted to touch on it again. You do not have to offer expedited shipping unless the customer asks, and we would not recommend that you do. It's expensive and quite frankly just not necessary for most people. And of course, if they request it and they want to pay for it, your customers want to pay for it, that's fine, but they can always do that. But from a cost savings perspective, just make sure to offer that basic regular shipping and potentially offer free shipping, typically with ground 3 to 5 day shipping. And your customers will really appreciate that, and they'll probably like that even better than the expedited shipping, because who doesn't love free shipping? 8, take the time to shop shipping rates while you're looking for your shipping. Make sure that you're using the right rates and that you're not using a small parcel for large items, because you will get heavily penalized for this. 9, connect with your customers early, often, and follow up. Make sure that you're following up with your customers after sales, reaching out if anything seems odd during the fulfillment process with their order. Just any excuse or chance to reach out to your customer, take it, and they will appreciate it, and they will keep that in mind, and it might help them be a return customer in the future as well. And finally, our 10th point here is to use Soapbox. Soapbox actually has a platform that can do all of these things we talked about today. All of it's included in our plan and addresses a lot of these pain points with e-commerce that we've talked about today. And we are very excited to show you that on our Friday webinar, when we will have that Soapbox platform overview and demo for you. With that being said, I'm going to see if we have any questions for today.